Hey guys, how you doing? Hope you having good day. In this video, I am gonna talk about my student Deku. What if Deku had a resurrection quirk? Part 1. And subscribe for more, also like this video, that will be awesome, helps me to stay motivated. And thanks to the author of this story, this video is possible. So do check it out and show some love. Name of this fanfic is Higher Grounds listed 719. So do check out the author of this story and check out entire work. Also if you have any complaints about videos, feel free to comment, I will try to improve them. Let's jump in video. It had been a typical day, the patrol had been quiet. Ibarra, Akavine, was exhausted, a 20-hour patrol was enough to bring anyone to their knees. But it was worth it to help keep the peace that so many had fought so hard and others had died for. She was almost back at base, her senses were dulled, she did not even see the attack coming. Backdraft came out of nowhere, catching Vine entirely by surprise. Die hero. Was the only warning of the blitz attack. Fire exploded out from the villain, she could barely get her vines in the way to help shield herself as the explosion launched her through a shop window. Stumbling to her feet, she sent her vines out only to meet another explosion as a girl came diving in afterward and drove a knife into Ibarra's stomach. With most of her vines singed or damaged, she gritted through the pain and tossed the girl to the side into a display case. Backdraft came in sneering and threw a chair, hitting her in the back and driving her to her knees. She hit the panic button on her radio as she felt the villain's rough hands grab her head. "You're dead, Vine," he rasped. "Maybe if you give me your flower, I will let you live." "Eat shit, you fiend." She spat out. A vine fired out, but his companion was there, their girl's fingers turning into shears and intercepting the attack. "Naughty little hero," she purred as she snipped the top of Ibarra's costume. "Why don't we see what you have been hiding all this time?" Snip, snip, snip. Sirens were heard in the distance, "We have to go, Sheer." "Any last words, hero?" Backdraft spat out. "Go to hell," she said, biting back the tears. "How about heads up?" A voice yelled, a young man came leaping over the counter and, in one fell move, swung a red fire extinguisher with precision into Backdraft's head. Sheer swung violently, cutting the man's arm, Ibarra heard him grunt in pain. The hero ripped the knife out of her gut and stabbed Sheer in the thigh, the woman screamed as the metal clink silenced her with a blow to the head. "Hey, you okay?" the man asked her as she slumped to the floor, blood coming out of the wound in her stomach. She saw the man drop the fire extinguisher and scramble to behind the counter, coming back with clean towels. "Shit, I wish Shiri was home." She heard him mutter. He pressed the towel to her wound. "Stay with me, Vine, come on, you got to stay with me." With the adrenaline fleeing her body as quickly as the blood from her wound was, her eyes were fluttering, she could make out that he had green curly hair and he was trying to smile at her. "Thank you for your help," she whispered out. Izuku Midoriya," her hero said. "You need to stay awake for me. Can you do that?" "I will try," she said. He was cradling her head near him while he applied pressure to her knife wound, causing her to hiss in pain. She noticed he smelled nice. "You smell like cinnamon and sugar," she whispered. "It smells nice." "Yeah, this is my shop, or it was," he said, looking around as the sirens got closer. "Help is almost here. Just stay with me." "I will. I need to close my eyes for a second." "No, that's a bad idea," he said. "Halt, put your hands where I can see them," a voice rang from outside the shop, followed by a flashlight. Izuku noted it was a woman's voice. Soon, a man's voice rang out, calling for him to do the same thing, but it added scumbag to the end. "I can't," he yelled back. "Vine has been stabbed in the gut. I have two villains that I bashed on the head with a fire extinguisher and I am trying to stem the flow of blood." Izuku Midoriya." The man's voice rang out. Izuku turned and looked, trying to see past the flashlight. "Red Riot," he said. "Yeah, man, it's me," the pro hero ran in, pulling some first aid supplies from his belt. "I know this guy, Pinky, he is a good one and we need some cuffs. Find out how far the medics are." "Did you knock these guys out?" he said, looking at the two villains unconscious and bleeding from the head. "Yeah, they were about to kill her and some other stuff," Izuku said. "They were switching out a clean towel." Izuku saw the pro hero Pinky come in and cuff the villains before turning to the scene before her. 2 minutes for the medic. "Hey, Red, I have a first aid kit under the counter. Can you grab it?" "Pinky, the light switch is over by the stairs." Once the lights came on, it took a moment for Izuku to adjust to the light. He blushed and looked away as Sheer had cut most of Ibarra's shirt open. Ibarra's eyes focused on the new light, looking at her hero. "Thank you for saving me," she said. "I haven't saved you yet, just hold on," he said back, still smiling for her. It felt like an eternity before the medics and a few other pro heroes. He saw Battle Fist run to Ibarra's side and climb into the ambulance as it peeled away. Izuku was looking around his destroyed cafe and rubbing his hand through his hair. "Hair Ed, how do you know this guy?" His lifelong friend and wife Pinky asked. The overhaul case, he said quietly. You mean, she said, stopping and looking at the Izuku. That is the guy that killed Overhaul. That's him, saved my life, saved Mirio's life, a whole bunch of us, he said. Hey, Izuku, where is Eri? Spending the night at a friend's house, he replied. I hate to do this, but we need to ask you some questions, Red said, taking a seat. Do you feel up to it? Is there anything we can do about my shop window? He said. I will make a call, Pinky said. We can get it boarded up for now while we get the paperwork filed and an adjuster can come out to assess the damage. Okay, Mr. Midoriya, in your own words, can you tell me what happened? Red Riot asked. Ibara. Waking up in a hospital is never good, but not waking up would be bad. As the old song went, everyone wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. Glad you awake. A familiar voice said. Ibara smiled, seeing her old friend battle Fist. Hey, Itsuka, she whispered. Oh, sweet lord, I am in pain. Well, you were stabbed, blown through a plate glass window, had your vines exploded, on top of being exhausted. I heard you were doing a 20-hour patrol. She said, annoyed. You can't do that kind of stuff, Ibara, you need rest like all of us. There was a coverage gap and I stepped up Itsuka, she said. Is the man who helped me okay? As far as I know, Red Riot and Pinky are handling that, Itsuka said. You feel up to answering some questions. Of course, a hero's work is never done because of the mountain of paperwork that comes with it, Ibara said with a smile. Eri. One night, she said, looking at her father. I leave you alone for one night and manage to get into a villain fight and destroy the cafe. Wait till Grandma hears about this. See what happens when you abandon me to go to a concert, he said, sniffling. I was left all alone and I nearly died. Inari's mom thinks you're pretty cute and said you can come over to play anytime you want. Eri said cheekily. Her mom scares me, Izuku said, shuddering. Hasn't she had like 8 ex-spouses? 9, Eri said, shrugging, but who knows, Dad, maybe you will be lucky 10. She was looking around. How are we going to pay for all of this? Insurance, her father said. The hero's insurance will, but in the meantime, ours. The glass people will be here later today, the only problem is the display case. And the dishes and the cups. That was the cold case, and they destroyed the cappuccino machine, Eri said, peeking behind it. Dad, are we going to be okay? We will be just fine, sweetie, he hugged her. I promise. Okay, well, let's make this happen, Captain, Eri said, rolling her sleeves. We should work on cleaning this place, so Grandma only has a small heart attack when she gets home. What did I do to deserve such a wonderful daughter? He said, smiling. Saved my life and gave me a reason to live. She replied quietly. Ibara fell asleep after she gave her statement, she did not wake up for over 12 hours. When she finally did, it was to get an ass chewing from Kami Woods. Despite her protests, she was put on medical leave. She tried to protest, but even Mount Lady was on Kami's side, leaving her no other options. Accessing the incident report, she was happy to hear that the villains were in custody, but she was confused when the shop owner's name had been redacted. Itsuka didn't know either, as she immediately went to the hospital with Ibara. Pinky and Red were mum on this as well. She had wanted to thank the shop owner who had saved her life. Higher Grounds Coffee Shop. Inko was friendly and relaxed, it had been a lovely vacation. She had protested mightily when her son and granddaughter gave her a gift. She fully intended to refund the all-inclusive holiday only for her granddaughter to smile and tell her, non-refundable, paid in advance and paid in full. Inko scowled, but that only made them laugh. In the end, her son told her that she deserved it for all that had happened and all she had done for him and for Eri. When the cab turned the corner for home, her relaxation began to go out the window as she saw the boarded-up storefront and the closed sign on the door. Inko took a deep breath, paid her driver, got her bags, and opened the door. She was prepared for the worst, instead, she saw her son and granddaughter. What happened? Inko said immediately. Hi Grandma, hi Mom, was what greeted her. Dad may have fought 2 villains and provided life-saving first aid to a hero, Eri said quickly. In my defense, I was at the Earphone Jack concert. I better get a better explanation than that. Inko said, her hand on her hip. The store was closed and 2 villains jumped Vine, knocking her through the window. She tried to fight them off, but they got the better of her and were about to kill her if she did not do something bad, so that I may have jumped in, he winced. You did what? Inko shouted. I may have hit them with the fire extinguisher in the head, Eri noted her father maneuvering to put her in between them. Izuku Inko looked at her son, who was about ready to explode. Are you hurt? She said, calming down. I got cut on the arm, it wasn't bad, and Eri fixed me up in the morning, he said. Did the insurance adjuster or the hero commission come by yet? Inko said, picking up her bags to take them upstairs. No, not yet. I already called the glass guy and I called Hatsum Repair for the case. He said. Okay, I am going to take my bags upstairs and I will be back down to help you clean, Inko said, walking off. The next day. Ibera found herself walking back down the street where she had been attacked. She saw what she thought was the shop, but the glass had already been replaced. She saw the door open, a young teenage girl and a woman with green hair were exiting. She heard the girl yell "Bye, Dad," as they headed off down the street. The scent of cinnamon and sugar wafted out, enticing Ibera even more. She walked in. The cafe was bustling. She saw a waitress effortlessly gliding between tables, setting down drinks in the origin of the heavenly aroma. These sinful-looking hot cinnamon rolls seemed to be on every table. She looked at the man she remembered working behind the bar filling orders. When he saw her, she saw him call to the back and a tall, wispy girl came out and took over as he walked around to her. "Fine," he said, happy to see her. "I am glad you are all right, how are you feeling? Can I get you anything?" "I am doing well, thank you. A green tea and one of those cinnamon rolls would be lovely," Ibarra said, reaching for her purse. "No, it's on the house, take a seat. I will bring it out in just a moment," he said, disappearing back behind the counter. True to his word, it didn't take long and he was back with a hot roll and her tea. "Do you mind if I sit?" "No, please, I want to thank you properly," Ibarra said, motioning to the seat. Once he was seated, she took a sip of the tea and smiled, "It was perfect. I want to thank you for saving my life and..." He held up his hand. "There is no need to thank me. It is the least I can do after all you and your classmates did after All Might in Shigaraki. Be that as it may, it was a heroic thing you did," she smiled at him. "Few people would have risked themselves like that, so please thank you Mr. Midoriya, Izuku Midoriya," he said, returning her smile. "Well, thank you, Izuku." She took her fork, cut a piece of the cinnamon roll, and took a bite. Her face lit up in delight, she knew this was something she could eat every day. "This is amazing. The best one I have ever had." She liked that he blushed, she noticed he was not wearing a wedding ring, which she found pleasing. "I would like to thank you properly for saving me," she said. "May I take you to dinner?" "That isn't necessary, Vine," he protested, waving his hands. "Ibera," she said. "My name is Ibera, please call me that when I am out of costume." "Ibera," he said like he was sharing a secret. "Ibera, that isn't necessary." "You are correct, it is not, but I want to thank the man who saved my life and virtue." She smiled at him and he could feel his protests dying in his mouth. "Please, Izuku Midoriya, allow me to repay this debt with a meal, it is the least I can do." "Okay, just tell me when," he said, smiling as he knew he could not say no. "How about Thursday night? I can meet you here at 7 p.m. she said. "Thursday at 7 sounds good." He got up from the table as she took another bite of her cinnamon roll. "Please enjoy." He smiled and went back to work. Ibarra stayed and enjoyed her tea and cinnamon roll. The tea was so delightful that she even ordered a pack of the rolls and liked the place's name, Higher Grounds. With a smile on her face, she exited the little cafe. That afternoon. The day was winding down when the door opened and Izuku frowned, recognizing someone from the Hero Commission. He excused himself from his workers, Inko frowning when she saw the petite woman walk in. "Can we talk in my office?" he said as he came around. "If you prefer," the woman said. Once inside, "Hello again, Ms. Hero," he said, taking a seat. "Mr. Midoriya," she responded politely as she sat opposite him. "I will make this as brief as possible, we read the reports and have been able to corroborate everything. You are in no trouble, and seeing as your daughter was not home, nothing would require us to reopen any surveillance or return you to monitoring status." Izuku visibly relaxed. "That is good to hear, so what do I owe this honor?" Izuku said, annoyance creeping into his voice. "I am just here to expedite your insurance claim, Izuku," she said softly. "Look, it doesn't have to be like this between us." "No, Hina, it didn't, but you sided with them," he responded. "You choose them over me and Eri." "I was doing my job, Izuku, I had to," she protested. "No, Hina, that wasn't your job. You turned our lives upside down because you didn't believe me." He could feel his anger rising. "I told you that it was nothing. I told you that she is the daughter of our repair company, but you didn't believe me. You made her life hell, my life hell, instead of trusting me." Anger was filling his voice. "I am sorry, Izuku," she said, rising to her feet. "I am going to go, please submit your bills for reimbursement. I will see that they are paid promptly." "I am sorry, Izuku," she said over her shoulder as she left. After the door closed, he sat back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. Inko came in. "Are you okay, Izuku?" "Yeah, Mom," he sighed. It is always hard to see her. "I know, sweetie," Inko sighed and closed the door. Izuku opened a drawer in his desk and pulled out a photo of him and Hina, their arms around each other, a diamond ring on her finger. At night. Grandma, Dad has a date. Eri yelled. What? Inko yelled. Traitor. Izuku whispered to Eri, who started giggling. Ibara. So, you were going on a date? Itsuka exclaimed. No, I am just taking him to dinner to say thank you and get to know him better, Ibara protested. That second part, she waved her finger in the air. That is the very definition of a date. I just want to thank him for saving my life, Ibara deflected. Is he cute? Itsuka pressed. He is handsome, Ibara said wearily. Married? Itsuka said. I didn't see a ring or a mark. She said triumphantly, from the look on Itsuka's face immediately told Ibara she had made a mistake. So, you looked, the smile on Itsuka's face spread as she pulled out her phone and started texting. No. No. Ibara shouted, cursing that her hair had not regrown yet. Too late. Itsuka smiled. Ibara stared in horror as her phone began to light up and messages flooded her phone. It was the final message that struck horror into her heart. It was from Satsuna and it just read OMW. Ibara was exhausted when Sed and her friends left that night, though they had made an appointment to show up early Thursday and help her prepare for the date, despite her protests that it wasn't a date, just a thank you dinner. She didn't know anything about him, he owned a bakery and had a daughter that well, there was no way he was the biological father. She was a teenager unless he was remarkably precocious. Ibara nibbled on her thumb, she had gone on a few dates but never a second date. Did she want this to be a date? She wanted to get to know him better, he had jumped in and saved her that night. He was a civilian, she knew he was a father, ran a coffee shop bakery, and was willing to risk his life for her. She wanted to know him better and say thank you. As she made her way to bed, her heart prayed that he was a good person and that they could have an actual date. May. Wow, you sure did a number on this thing. May stared at the case. What in the world are you doing here? Don't you have support gear to be making? Izuku was stunned that May was here to do the repairs. Nah, I needed a break, they made me take a break, you know, she sighed as she walked over and hugged him. I also needed my cinnamon roll refresh. It has been a while. It is good to see you, he wrapped his arms around her, smiling. So, how long is your enforced break this time? 2 months they have to repair the workshop, she added sheepishly. May. What? There wasn't any way I knew it would blow up. She looked at him, trying to plead her case, when his eyebrow went up questioningly. Fine that it would blow up so big. Stare. I swear I thought it would be enough for the blast shields to handle if it went up. I figured it was worth the risk. Stare. Okay, I knew the risks. Her shoulders sank in defeat. When she heard him laugh, it was all worthwhile. You suck. She crossed her arms under her sizable chest and pouted. I will make you dinner. He smirked. Double desert. Fine double desert, her pout instantly faded. You know some other things around her could use your touch. Everything needs a little love from me. She laughed as she pulled out her toolbox and started working on the serving case. Now tell me again how this happened. Inko and Izuku. What's her name? Inko said as she set a cup of tea in front of Izuku. Ibara, her hero name is Vine, he responded, smiling at the vintage All Might mug. Do you like her? Inko settled in her chair. She is a good hero, but I don't know her mom, he sat back. This isn't a date. It is just dinner, a thank you dinner. Well, as long as you have fun, nothing bad can happen from you having dinner, Inko smiled. Dinner? Ibara barreled down the alley with Izuku by her side, she was about to shout something when he grabbed her and dived behind a dumpster as a torrent of fire exploded down the alley. Are you okay? They said in unison. Yes. They both responded. We have to move, she said. He was lying on top of her, his arms braced, keeping his body weight from crushing her. The precarious position they would be in would have caused both to burst into nuclear levels of blushing, but the threat to their lives was keeping it at bay. He got to his feet, peeking around the dumpster as the villain Inferno stalked down the alleyway, his flamethrowers ready. Ibara cursed the fact that she wasn't fully recovered and her phone and radio had been burned in the first attack. Her white dress was stained with dirt and grim. Her new heels were gone, the only thing intact was her makeup. They got up and bolted, she shoved him out of the way as a firebird came soaring down the alley, she braced as it hit her, sending her flying into a brick wall. She did her best to douse the flames. Inferno was pyrokinetic, he could control flames but not create them, when he formed them into a shape, they tended to be more solid. She saw Inferno moving in for the kill, the sadistic grin on his face. She tried to reach her feet, but her ankle crumpled under her weight. She watched horror as Izuku came barreling from around the corner, crashing into the villain with a solid right cross. The villain fell back but managed to fire his flamethrowers, forcing Izuku back, his coat caught fire. As he scrambled to get the coat off, Inferno was done with playing around. Izuku saw his life move slowly as he saw the villain ready to roast him alive. He tried to move, but he also cursed that someone was going to have to tell Eri and his mother that he had died. Ibera cried out in pain as she activated her quirk and pushed as hard as she could. Blood ran down her face as her veins fired out. They grabbed Pyro around the neck and yanked him back into the air, sending him crashing into a wall, crushing the fuel tanks on his back and sending him crashing to the ground. He sped back up as Izuku was alive. He saw the villain was still moving, but in a crumpled heap against the wall, he ran in and drove his knee into the villain's face. It was trapped between the wall and his knee, bones broke as the villain was knocked out. He turned and stumbled over to Ibera, who asked if he had his phone. He quickly unlocked it and handed it over as she called it in. She felt something wrapped around her head and saw him shirtless, covering her head, which was bleeding. This time, she blushed, staring at his bare chest. He was in excellent shape, there were a few scars here and there, the most noticeable was a burn scar on his shoulder. Ibera had seen other men like this, but something about this man stirred feelings in her that had been dormant for a while now. "You know we must stop meeting like this," he whispered. "I don't know, I mean, at least you won't ever forget me," she responded. "I couldn't if I tried." He leaned down, looking her in the eyes. "Are you okay?" "Yes, I just injured my ankle." "Help me up," she extended her hand. He pulled her up, slipping her arm around his shoulder and waist. Neither of them saw the other blush at the touch. "This may be inappropriate, but after all this is done, do you want to return to the cafe? I will make you dinner, I can get a new shirt on." He scratched his cheek. "I am hungry," she smiled, looking away. Ibara found herself fresh out of the shower wearing a black sweatshirt that read higher grounds and a pair of dark green sweats, sitting at the counter and watching her date cook them dinner. He saw her look over her shoulder and all around dramatically. "Is everything okay?" he asked. "I am just waiting for the next villain attack," she smiled. "So, I have to ask, how did you end up with a teenage daughter? You do not appear to be any older than me. Also, there is not a Mrs. I am unaware of, is there?" "No, the only Mrs., well, former Mrs. is my mother, who is upstairs asleep," he smiled. "I adopted Eri after I got her out of a bad situation, shall we say. Mom helped me out while I finished school. Found a love for baking and cooking while in college, opened this place, and have been here ever since." "Does your quirk have something to do with cooking?" she asked, mouthwatering at the smell of the grilled steak, roasted vegetables, and fluffy mashed potatoes. "I am quirkless, actually." She saw him wince a little as he said it. She was a little stunned, there was hardly any quirkless anymore, most of them were from previous generations. Meeting someone her age was a new experience, then she thought about it. This man had saved her life the first time they met by running into battle with two villains, and tonight, he had risked his life again. Her mouth was agape slightly as all this information danced through her head. "You risked your life not once but twice to save me, and you don't even have a quirk." He nodded as he began to plate their food. "I know people with quirks that would have hesitated or flat out ran the other way. Yeah, common sense has never been my strongest point." He set the plates on the counter. "What would you like to drink?" "I have some wine." "That sounds nice." She took the plates and walked them to a table. "Wait, that means you rescued Eri as well." He came out with wine glasses and a bottle, and she saw him take a deep breath. "Are you familiar with the Shai Hasekai case?" The bear sat back, recalling the details. Overhaul, the head of Shai Hasekai, had been killed during a raid on the compound. He had been at the center of the trigger drug epidemic and the quirk-suppressing bullets. She had heard that a civilian had killed him, that he had kidnapped. "That was you?" Izuku nodded. "He was performing experiments on Eri. I found her and had taken her in, but he caught up with us and took us back to his compound. I got a message to an old acquaintance of mine and—" "You are truly an amazing man," she smiled at him. "How are you not married?" "How are you not?" he countered, pouring her a glass of wine. "Work and well work, did I mention work?" She was happy she earned a laugh from him. "Also, there are my views on certain things." "You mean your religious views?" He smiled. "I follow the hero news, wanted to be one when I was young." "You would have been an amazing hero, Izuku, but yes, that tends to cause some issues." She took a sip of the wine and smiled. The food smelled terrific, she silently lowered her head in prayer. She was happy when she saw him do something similar. She cut a piece of the steak and popped it in her mouth. It was beautiful, tender, and flavorful. She looked at him. "This is so good. What about you?" "I thought I found the right one, but it didn't work out." He smiled. "This is nice, talking with you without the villain attack." "It is, but I still owe you dinner. We may need to hire bodyguards to ensure we get back safely to the restaurant." She giggled, immediately stopping herself. She had not giggled in years. "I don't know. We may still get attacked the way things are going," he said with a hearty laugh. "Let's eat." It was a casual conversation over some truly great food. Well, he was not religious, he was spiritual. He had a good laugh, was a great listener, and made her feel comfortable and relaxed. Dinner turned into dessert, which turned into tea, not until her alarm told her it was time to wake up. She looked at it in surprise, she had spent the whole night talking with him and had not even noticed. "I guess that means it is time for you to head out," he said, standing up and stretching. "I would offer to walk you home, but I am worried that you would then have to walk me home and we would be stuck in a time loop. But then I wouldn't have to say goodnight," she muttered, quickly clamped that down as he walked her towards the door. She stopped, pulled a pen from her purse, grabbed his hand, and wrote her number down. "Call me, I would like to do this again without the villain attack, though." Before he could say anything, and she was not even sure why she did it herself, he kissed his cheek, went beet red, and fled. He stood there stunned till he heard a cough behind him. Turning, he saw his mother. "Please tell me you didn't seduce the holy hero." "Mother?" Their second attempt at dinner went better than the first, they had made it to the restaurant without incident. They had been able to reschedule for the following Friday night, much to her friend's delight and to his family, so they could tease him that it was a date and not just dinner. Friday night dinner plans were a date and middle week was a friend's thing. He had tried to downplay the situation, but his mother and daughter were ruthless. Then, one of his patrons invited him to the opening of their music bar, which was, of course, on Friday night. When he called Ibera to ask if she wanted to accompany him to the event after dinner, he just happened to do so when she was at lunch with Itsuka, Setsuna, Momo, and Ichako. Momo was just this goddess of classic beauty. Tall, long black hair, deep black eyes, porcelain skin, the number 3 hero in the country, and the valedictorian of their graduating class. The heiress, a nickname she was given in school, was one of the few in their class who was married. The scandal was she had married a musician, the lead singer of The Sound of Fury, Caliban. The two were deliriously happy, he adored her, and she him. They had just celebrated their 3rd wedding anniversary. Ichako was Momo's classmate, 1A. To say that the two girls had survived the most patchless class ever in the history of the UA would be a lie. Ichako's brown hair was not long tied back in a braid down her back, her rich brown eyes still shone with a brightness that belied their experience. They had lost classmates in their very first week of school when they were attacked at the USJ, another to the hero killer when the League had attacked their camp. Both of them lost classmates that day. Then Camino, the war, all of it. The bear liked Ichako. The girl was pleasant, level-headed, and joyous to be with. They had become terrific friends over the years, all the girls from class had. Itsuka, the big sister of them all, was Ibera's oldest friend from school, the orange-haired beauty who always seemed to be others than herself. But that was what made Itsuka, Itsuka. And Setsuna was chaos on her legs, she was a ball of fire, life, and energy. But the trouble of their school days, Setsuna didn't want to let life pass her or anyone around her by, even if she had dragged, tricked, or congealed into experiencing it. Her fellow green-haired sisters were not about to let Ibera not seize this moment. So the 3 girls kept their excitement in until Ibera had agreed to go with him to the music bar, then they exploded in excitement, declaring it an official date. Thus, a completely new outfit was needed. Ibera tried to protest the expense, but Momo pulled out her credit card and insisted it was on her, and they dragged Ibera off. She didn't know it then, but Izuku was dragged out himself by Inko and Eri. Workers' agency. Tommy Woods was behind his desk, staring at the document before him. The Hero Commission entered the office early this morning, doing a surprise wellness audit. Since that nonsense during the war with Hawks, Nagant, and everything, the Hero Commission and heroes had been uneasy around each other. The new head of the commission was doing everything right, but it still had the old stink of yesteryear. Mainly, when a wellness audit was performed, the audit's purpose was to ensure that everything was being handled and appropriately reported, and that nothing was going on under the table that could lead to the erosion of the public's faith in heroes again. The heroes still fought to reclaim the public's trust after the country almost fell to One for All, Shigaraki, and League of Villains. He knew the audits led by reputation and appearance, Hina Hanzo. The woman had a fierce reputation that preceded her by a mile. But she was good at her job and wanted the same as everyone else. Heroes to be trusted again. She just came at it from a different perspective. People could have the same goal, but how they would get there would always be different. Hina was in the process of interviewing Kami Woods directly about Vine and the recent incidents. She was pressing to see if this was part of a larger organized villain offensive or just a random string of bad luck. This meant they pored over all Vine reports for the past year, searched the young hero's office, and accessed company emails. Hina liked Kami, the man was a great hero who did most things in the book. His partner and wife, Mount Lady, on the other hand, Hina, wanted to strangle him, but that wasn't the purpose of the visit. Why all this focus on Vine? Kami said, setting the court paper aside. We need to ascertain whether this is a series of unfortunate events for her, I mean, 2 fire villains in a matter of days. Hina smiled pleasantly at the pro. There is also another matter that we at the commission need to make sure that if she or the civilian were the target. Who is the civilian? Kami leaned forward. His name is nowhere on the reports. Izuku Midoriya. Hina's smile was gone. She watched that voice register in Kami Wood's head as he sat back in silence. "Is Vine aware?" he said. "That I do not know, not unless he told her, but those that were there that day are still under gag order. We have G's following up with them today as well." Hina sat back. Fire quirks have had a bad rap since Dobby and Endeavor. Shoto is doing a wonderful job clarifying the stigma, but it will take a while. And you have seen how more villains trying to make a name for themselves are fire-based. "I understand," Kami said. "Was the girl there during the attacks?" "No, she was not," Hina said. "Now I would like to talk to you about an email between Vine and Lizardi from May 15. Hina's fingers danced across the tablet as Kami pulled up the email. Date night attempt number 2. Ibarra sat in her apartment with some friends as they finished putting on the last touches on her outfit. The white skirt was just above the knees, she had protested the length. The top was a silk green spaghetti strap blouse with a hint of cleavage showing, she protested this. She was matching green Spartan strap sandals, gold earrings, her cross, and a watch that belonged to her mother. She had lost a battle with the makeup, she stood in the mirror at the smoky eye that had done, and while she wanted to protest, she had to admit it looked terrific. She had wanted to meet him at the coffee shop, but he insisted on picking her up, saying that as long as she made it into the car without being attacked, they had a much better chance of making it to the restaurant. She felt self-conscious about the whole thing as she stepped out of her building. She saw him standing by the car with black slacks, a dark green long-sleeved shirt, and a simple but stylish watch. She immediately noticed his haircut, the sides had been cut higher, the top trimmed down, and he looked very handsome. Any doubt about her outfit quickly faded when she saw him say wow before he greeted her, opening the door. She blushed and thanked him, taking his extended hand as he helped her into the car. "You look stunning, Ibarra," he said as she sat down. "Thank you, Izuku, you look quite handsome yourself." She blushed slightly at his touch. She even giggled when she saw him in the mirror as he walked around the car, saying wow again and shaking his head. They didn't escape without an audience or Setsuna video tapping the whole thing. "Damn, he is cute," Set said, "Look at those freckles." "I agree, if Ibarra doesn't like him, I wouldn't mind getting to know him," Achako whistled. The other girls giggled as Set started typing things into her phone once it floated back in the window. "Set, what are you doing?" Itsuka asked. "Running his plates, we need to know who she is going out with. You know, for her safety and junk." Set replied, trying to sound innocent. "And not because you are nosy." Itsuka put her hand on her hip and raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, that as well." Hina was at her desk eating dinner and finishing her reports when her phone rang. "Yes. Sorry to bother you, ma'am, it is Dreg. Lizardi just ran the plates of a restricted target and she is not on duty." The voice came out over the speaker. "They are his plate, ma'am." Hina sighed, "Send me the file, put a trace on Lizardi, and find out where he is. I want eyes on him and Eri in the next 20 minutes. "Yes ma'am." Dinner. Ibarra was pleased with the small Italian restaurant they walked into, it was a local spot. She had seen it a few times on patrol but never stopped to eat. She laughed when older women greeted them, it was the woman whose smile just exploded. "Oh, Izuku, it is you, and what this you bring a date?" The woman looked at Izuku and raised an eyebrow. The sudden familiar nature of the woman's greeting and her accent had this warm mix of Italian to it that made Ibarra feel welcomed, though she blushed at the woman calling it a date. "So, does he bring girls here often?" Ibarra said, raising an eyebrow at the blushing Izuku, who was trying to respond. "Oh no, Senora, you must be very special," the woman smiled and wiggled her eyebrows. "Come, I'll give you the best seat in the house." They were seated. She smiled when the older woman kissed Izuku's cheek, then squeezed her hand. She whispered. "You be good to him, he a good boy." This made Ibarra blush. "Well, that was an interesting way to start dinner," he said. "Still better than last time." "We made it into the restaurant," Ibarra laughed as she looked at the menu. "They seem to know you here." "I love this place, I found it high school, the food is delicious, and the Marinos are good people." She loved the warmth in his voice as he spoke about them. "Their Sayapino is amazing, as is their Alfredo." "Is it single servings or?" Ibarra looked up and felt the butterflies in her stomach begin to stir. It may have been the dim lighting, but the glow on his face just moved here. "Family style." "Family style, we can order both and share." He looked across the table and caught her glance as she was peeking over the menu, looking at him through her eyelashes. "If you like." Holy hell, this is not good. I cannot be crushing on a pro hero trying to be nice to me to save her. He thought. "I would like that," she whispered. They ordered some wine to accompany their meal, and the fresh bread was excellent. When Ibarra took a bite, her eyes and face lit up like a Christmas tree. She said her grace before she started eating and saw him seem to do the same thing. "You said you are not religious, but you seem to pray before we eat." She wondered what his response would be. Part of her wondered if he would try and spin some lie to see how far he could get with Holy Hero, as some called her. She also cursed at herself for the thought. He had laid his life on the line for her twice already, and he was here trying to show her a good time on this maybe a date. Just a higher power, he paused. When I was kidnapped with Eerie, I would close my eyes and ask for help, a higher power, God, spirits, ancestors, even heroes. I don't know if that helped us be found or if that was all just luck, but I do it all the time now. But I ask whomever or whatever may have helped me that day to look over Eerie and my mother. Well, whoever interfered, I am glad they did, she smiled, sipping the wine. I am also. I was trying to get through life at that point, but then I had Eerie, and I had something more to live for. She saw him squeeze his hand a few times. That is how they get you. You start living for one thing, and then you want more. Very dastardly of them, the first one is always free. She was happy that she got a laugh out of him. So Izuku Midoriya, what do you want out of life now? It would be nice to find someone, get married, have a kid or two. I want to see Eerie graduate, find love, and find her spot in life. I wouldn't mind seeing my mom find someone to take care of her, as long as they are a good person, he shrugged. What about you? My life has been so interesting and full of such highs and lows that for the longest time, I just wanted to get to the next day or week. Her gaze was far away. There are those that never got this far, that never even made it past the first week of UA, and then add everything else. I want to be a good hero, it doesn't need to be filled with fame and accolades. I want that when the time comes for the Lord to call me home, people will say just that. She was a good hero, a good friend, and that same Lord willing a good wife and mother. Why just good? He said, leaning forward. God created the world, the universe, and all the wonderful things we see. And when he created all that, he didn't sit back and say that it was amazing, wonderful, or any other adjective you can think of. He said it was good. If I can be good, that is fine with me. Her gaze returned to the booth they were sitting in, and the man stared at her with a soft smile. That would be good, he whispered. Has there been anyone you thought about settling down with? Some other hero? No, I have been attracted to some physically, but there wasn't any other sort of connection, her gaze falling to the wine glass. So I just ignored that part and focused on work. I haven't been out like this in years. I like it, I don't have to be Vine or be a hero, I can be a bear. I haven't been able to do that with anyone outside my classmates. So, thank you Izuku. You are very welcome Ibera, Vine is cool. She is a good hero. But I think Ibera is pretty darn good as well. As he said it, he realized that he was looking at nothing else but her eyes and knew he was starting to crush on her. He silently cursed himself and looked away. What about you? She finally asked. When he looked at her, the butterflies were running amok. She wanted this not to be a maybe date but a date. One that they could do again. I was engaged, he responded. It didn't work out. You don't have to talk about it, it must have been hard, she said quickly, although incredibly curious. She didn't trust me, she tried to ruin a good friend's life, which was complicated. He responded. She also didn't treat Eerie right, Eerie is my daughter, it is a package deal. As it should be, family is not defined by blood. The girls in the hero course, those are my sisters. Ibera boldly reached out and touched his hand. If she couldn't see that, she wasn't right for you. Her loss is going to be some lucky woman's gain. They both smiled before blushing and separating as the waitress brought their food. The conversation lightened with a meal being served, with them trading some amusing stories. They shared their likes and dislikes, it had turned into a date without either recognizing it. Each of them is looking for common ground and finding it with ease. When they left the restaurant, they didn't notice the nip in the air as they made their way to the music bar. High notes. Efren greeted Izuku at the door. The man was average height with a slight build, fiery red hair and eyes, which made him stand out. When Izuku introduced Ibera, the man greeted her warmly before showing them to their table. There was a stage with a dance floor, tables, and booths surrounding the dance floor. Everything had a rich wood fragrance. As more people came in soon, the lights dimmed and the music started. Center stage was an older woman with a four-piece band behind her. The night was off when the spotlight hit her and she started singing. Ibera and Izuku ordered some drinks and continued to talk. He noticed her swing in her seat some, and when he asked her to dance, she blushed and held out her hand. They danced, sat and talked for hours, and enjoyed a few drinks. She noticed he stopped and switched to water not long after they arrived, wanting to be sober to drive her home. It was on the dance floor when the music changed to a soulful ballad. They swayed gently on the dance floor, their hearts thumping so loud they swore the other must have heard it. At the song's end, she blushed at how he looked at her. His gaze was filled with a longing she thought would never be directed toward her. They noticed how easily her hand fell into his when he led her from the dance floor. The hour was getting late as they said their goodbyes and headed out into the night, his jacket draped over her shoulders. They drove home, talking about the music, the atmosphere, the drinks, everything and anything, but how much they wanted this to be over. When he pulled up to her building, he got out to come around and open her door. She reluctantly let his jacket fall from her shoulders. She took his hand as he helped her out of the vehicle. She understood at this moment she wanted him to kiss her. She tried to chase the thoughts from her head. It was just an uncomplicated dinner night. Maybe she would see him again at the coffee shop, but it was just a wonderful night, fueled by some loneliness she had forgotten that was there. It was nice to wrap herself in the night's fantasy. She was sure she imagined the looks in his eyes or his words. She was searching for a connection. That was it. The boys didn't chase her like the other girls. She was too weird, her views too much for them. She wanted to be chased, pursued, and chosen over the others. Finding someone who elevated her made her know the joy of coming home to someone who loved her, of coming home to a coffee shop where a man who loved her would welcome her home and ask her about her day. But that was all a dream. Thank you for the wonderful evening. It was nice to relax and enjoy someone's company. Ibera was about to take her hand away and let the evening end when she felt him tighten his grip. Ibera, he said softly. Yes, Izuku. She didn't turn to face him. She didn't want him to see the loneliness in her eyes. I had a wonderful time as well, and I know this was like a thank you dinner thing, but I was wondering if I could take you out on a date. His words just descended on her like a crashing wave. We might get attacked again if we try to tempt fate like that, she whispered, turning her head to meet his gaze. It would be worth it to see if there is something here. You're worth it, he responded. The butterflies in her stomach erupted in joy. So are you. Yes, Izuku, I would love to go on a real date with you. She leaned in and kissed his cheek again, this time though it was extremely close to his lips. Good night. She walked into her building, though she felt like she was floating. In a daze, he went to his car and headed home, wondering if he had just dreamed all that. Hina's screen broke as it was flung off her desk into a wall. The next morning. Ibera was finishing her protein shake when she received a call from the lobby. It was Itsuka, who had come to join her friend on her morning run. When Itsuka arrived at the door, she had a huge bouquet of white lilies and orchids. Flowers? Ibera questioned. Not from me. Your lobby guy told me they arrived this morning addressed for you, Itsuka said with a cheeky smile. There is a card. Ibera smiled and took the flowers, inhaling their fragrance. She hoped she knew whom the card was from, and when she opened it, her eyes lit up in delight as her hopes proved true. Itsuka smiled at her blushing friend, pulled out a vase, and filled it with water. Ibera. I hope you think this is silly of me, but I was driving home and saw an all-night florist, and I couldn't help myself. I had such a wonderful time last night, and I wish we could have met under different circumstances, but I am glad we did meet. I was wondering if Thursday would be too soon for our date. Message me when you get the flowers. Izuku. Ibera swooned, and her heart was pounding so hard it wanted to escape her chest. Is it wrong that now she wished she could have had kissed him last night? She turned to see her smirking friend, which made her blush even more as she placed the flowers in water, added some vitamins, took a quick picture, and sent it to Izuku. Ibera. The flowers couldn't be more perfect. Thursday would be great, I would like to know how to dress. She never knew seeing the 3 little dots could fill her with joy. Izuku. Something nice, we will be outdoors but not exposed. I hope you will come by the cafe before Thursday. Itsuka leaned on the counter, smirking, so how was your date? She said in a sing-song voice. Ibera blushed. Great, come on, I will tell you about it on our run, and maybe we can get something to drink after, Ibera responded. Oh, do you know a place? Itsuka said, deciding to play along. You know I do, Ibera smiled. Itsuki Bakugo. He groaned as he sat up in bed, he stretched, his body protesting the movement. He felt more alive after his shower and first cup of coffee. He looked and saw a few messages on his phone. When he saw one particular number, he grumbled. Unknown. I thought you should know your friend has been involved in 2 villain attacks in about as many days. Hey B. Can you not handle this? Unknown. I tried to talk to him, but he brushed me off. I was letting you know. Hey B. Is there a common element? Unknown. Vine. The number 6 hero in the country growled as he downed his coffee and went to get dressed. Izuku. He was all smiles as he entered the house after his morning workout. His mother noticed his happy demeanor as she put his breakfast on the table. Did you have a good time last night? Well, there was no villain attack, so that was different, he said as he sat down to eat. I had a wonderful time, Mom, it was great. I asked her out on a real date. Inko raised an eyebrow. Well, that's interesting, I take it you are interested in her. I can't explain it, Mom, it is just something about her. Maybe it's having been alone for years, but we seem to connect. Izuku paused. Am I overreacting? No, honey, you are just very passionate and tend to fall for someone hard, Inko smiled as she passed him a protein drink. Much like your mother. Just be careful, son. I will, Mom, he finished his food. I just hope that I am not wrong about this. He got up and kissed her cheek as he left to take a quick shower. Me too, baby, me too. She whispered. Izuku and Bakugo. The morning rush was done when Kitsuki Bakugo or King Explosion entered the coffee shop. Izuku stopped and looked at the calendar, wondering if he had lost track of the days. Kitsuki said nothing and just walked into the manager's office. Izuku turned, told the staff to prepare for lunch, and headed to his office. What is up, Kachin? A little early for your coffee delivery. Izuku said as he walked in. What is this bullshit I am hearing about you being involved with some villain attacks? He growled as he removed his cap and shook out his hair. And what does Vine have to do with all this? Well, good morning to you, too, Izuku said, taking a seat. Some villain jumped her on the way back to her agency. They knocked her through the front of the shop, they were about to do some bad stuff, so I jumped in and hit them with a fire extinguisher. For fuck's sake, Deku. Bakugo threw his hand up in exasperation. And the second time? She offered to take me to dinner to say thank you, and some attacked us on the way to the restaurant, Izuku shrugged. She handled most of that, I was more of a decoy. God damn it, Deku, I thought we were past all this shit. Kitsuki made a hand motion for a drink. Izuku opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. Izuku poured them each 2 fingers and held out a glass for Kitsuki. For Masaru. They said as they slammed the drink back. Well, that was it then? Kitsuki asked. Well, nothing happened when we went to dinner, and I may have asked her out on a date, Izuku winced as Bakugo laughed. Fucking really? Bakugo said, catching his breath. Miss Holy. Dude, if you wanted to go on a date with where you had a fucking shot, I could have set you up almost anyone from my class. Look, man, something just clicked and I want to see if it is real, Izuku replied as Bakugo held up his glass for a refill. Izuku poured them another drink. For all the poor bastards that didn't make it. They said, slamming back their drinks. Well, fucking call me next time stupid shit goes down, Kitsuki said, getting to his feet. Do you or the family need anything, money or some shit? No, we are good, business is doing great and your monthly order is just fine, Izuku said, taking the glasses and putting them away with the bottle. Thanks again for saving my life that night, Bakugo said, taking Izuku's hand. I fucked up your life and you still fucking saved mine. You know what, Kachin, if you hadn't done what you did, I would have never been in the position to save Eri, Izuku replied. We have been good for years now. Tell your mom I said hi. Be safe, Deku, and fucking call me if shit goes down again. He yelled as he put back on his hat and exited the cafe. Ibara and Itsuka. After a quick shower and changing clothes, they made their way toward higher grounds. Itsuka was so happy for her friend. Ibara seemed on the verge of a real romance, she hoped everything worked out. As they entered, Itsuka noticed how wonderful the shop smelled and a familiar posterior sticking out of a broken display case. Itsuka snuck over to the confusion of the staff and Izuku, who had just walked out of the kitchen. Itsuka reached down and gave Mei a massive pinch on the ass that made the mechanic girl squeal and scramble out of the case, ready to swing a wrench till she saw who it was. For fuck's sake, Itsuka, Mei said, laughing. I thought somebody was about to get a beating. What the hell are you doing here, Mei? Itsuka said with a smile. Suspended again, was all Mei said with a shrug. I have known this idiot for a long time, she added, pointing at Izuku. So when my father told me his shop got messed up, I volunteered to fix it. Battle fist? Izuku questioned. The one and only, Itsuka said, how did you know? Orange hair, teal eyes, you know Mei, and you walked in with a bear. He said as he walked around the counter to shake her hand. Aren't you as sharp as a tack? Itsuka said, shaking his hand. Thank you for saving my friend. Is there anything I could do for you? A signed photo to hang on the wall would be nice, he rubbed his head sheepishly. He turned and looked at Ibara, he walked over. It is nice to see you. I am glad to see you again as well, she responded, her head tilted down some, looking up at him through her eyelashes, a slight blush on her cheeks. Mei and Itsuka smiled as they saw him blush, but he couldn't take his eyes off her. Tell me he is a good guy, Mei, please let him be a good guy. Itsuka whispered. He is fucking a great guy, Mei responded. If he were a girl, I would snatch him up myself. But for him, I would try and like guys. Itsuka looked at Mei, slightly shocked. He always treated me great, even when I knew him back in school, never tried any funny business, made sure I ate, he even took me to our senior dance. It is the closest thing to romantic love I have. I have never heard you talk that way about anybody, Itsuka said, shocked. That's because there is only one of him, Mei smiled as she returned to work. If he had a quirk, he would have been one of the greatest heroes of all time. Mei paused. Hey Itsuka. Do you want to go out some night? Itsuka smiled, I hope you are asking me out on a date. I am, Mei said. I have always liked you, you have always been good to me. I would like that, May. Izuku finally found his voice, are you hungry? We just finished roasting off some turkey, I can make you a club sandwich with fresh potato salad. That sounds delightful, Ibara said. Izuku. He had been about to turn and walk away when she said his name. He turned and she daringly kissed his cheek. Thank you for the flowers. They both turned red as he fled back into the kitchen. May, get cleaned up, it is time for lunch. He yelled. Sure thing, Casanova. She yelled back. Itsuka walked over to her blushing friend. You are really into him. I am, Ibara replied. I never felt like this before, when I saw those flowers and read his card, I wanted to kiss him. Ibara leaned in. Not on the cheek either, she whispered. I just hope I am not rushing in. Just do what feels right and what you are comfortable with, Itsuka quickly hugged her. I hope this does work out. Where did he go? Lunch, club sandwich and potato salad, Ibara said. I love club sandwiches. Itsuka said, her mouth watering. Fresh roasted turkey as well, Ibara smiled, taking a seat. A short time later, May sat with them, the girls were talking when Izuku came over with lunch. He served everyone and took a seat purposely left open for him next to Ibara. Itsuka noticed how he hesitated on eating till they had all taken a bite, but while it seemed he was being polite, which he was looking for their reactions. In particular, he was looking for Ibara's response. When her face lit up in joy and satisfaction, Itsuka could see him suppress his smile. He was trying to impress her. Itsuka liked that, she noticed that he was also very attentive to her. If Ibara was bringing her by, he knew that Itsuka's opinion mattered. So when is the next first date? Itsuka asked even though she knew the answer. His reaction of a faint blush told her what she needed. Thursday, he said, taking a drink of his soda to give him time to think of any answers needed. Where are you taking her? Itsuka pressed. Don't answer her, Izuku, Ibara said, jumping to his defense. I want to be surprised. He only sat with them briefly, talking to all of them before he excused himself as he had to prepare for the lunch crowd. May excused herself shortly after promising to call Itsuka that night. Ibara raised an eyebrow at her friend. Hey, if you can have a date, so can I. Itsuka responded. That was an amazing sandwich. He is so into you. Ibara smiled at the statement, is he? Are you sure? I hope he is, I hope I am not jumping the gun or that I don't freak him out. Listen, Ibi, he saved you from a villainous attack and when you two tried to go to dinner, there was another. If that didn't scare him off, Itsuka patted her friend's hand. When do you go back to work? Friday, light duty. As they got up to leave, Ibara said, hopefully, they clear me the following week. She was pleased when he looked up and waved goodbye as they went. First date. Izuku arrived on time and though he couldn't come to her door, he was allowed to wait in the lobby. When the elevator doors opened and Ibara stepped out, he was speechless, he was thankful that he found his voice by the time she reached him. She wore a black dress that billowed above her knees, it hung to her upper body, giving off a very alluring tone. It was a high collar with black lace, the material was see-through on her arms and above her chest. An intricate lacing pattern hid the bust line, but left just enough exposed to hint at what was beneath. Her black sandals, purse, and gold crucifix completed her look. He noticed that she was wearing simple but beautiful earrings as well. Her hair had grown and was now down to her shoulders, held back by a silk ribbon with a small red flower pin. The paleness of her skin just seemed to enhance all the parts that were exposed against the black. She was so happy to see his initial look when the elevator doors opened, the small army upstairs had reassured her that she would be knocked for a loop. She was nervous, the dress was shorter than she would have chosen, but longer than Satsuna had first wanted. The compromise with the entire arm covering was provided by Ryuko, who was rather skilled at suggestive clothing. She noticed he was dressed in a fine black suit with a dark green shirt and accents that matched his hair. What made her smile was that his tie pin was a small red flower, just like her hairpin. The roses in his hand just checked another box off her list of things she had hoped for. She took the flowers and used them to hide her smile. She walked over to the desk agent, handed him the flowers, and told him something that made them both laugh. Itsuka is upstairs. I just told him to have her come get those and put them in water, she smiled at him, she could tell he seemed apprehensive about bringing her roses. I love the flowers, it just brings me joy. Now, shall we be off? They arrived at the arboretum, much to her surprise, she, of course, knew of the place she liked to come here often. Her curiosity was further piqued when she saw other vehicles and people with similar dress standards heading inside. She looked over and saw the illuminated sign reading evening amongst the flowers. I have come here often, but I am unfamiliar with this event, she said, looking at him. He immediately got nervous, thinking he had made an error in their plans. It is a catered dinner, with some dancing, and we get to take an exclusive tour of their moon garden. Some special flowers are in bloom, like the Casablanca lily and the angel's trumpet tonight. His stress dropped considerably when her smile bloomed like one of those flowers. That sounds lovely, his smile warmed her as he exited the car and came around to open her door and help her out. All the tables are spaced apart and semi-private so we can have a nice dinner. He offered her his arm, which she took, it just checked another box. If you are up to it after dinner, I reserved some tickets for observatory. So dinner amongst night blooming flowers and evening looking at the stars. She could barely contain the butterflies when he rubbed the back of his head. Is it too much? He winced a little. Too corny? No, Izuku, it is more than I could have dreamed of for tonight. Her smile did things to him, the gentleness of her voice just made his head whirl. Dinner was exactly as advertised. They sat at a semi-private table with a small four-square dance floor next to them. Once seated and welcomed, she heard a live orchestra begin to play, it set this dreamlike quality to the whole dinner. Small lights laced amongst the trees and the wait staff came and went, barely being noticed. The food was delicious. She recognized the soup as being from Bernard's, a restaurant Ibera was fond of. They talked about everything she wanted to know about his childhood. He described it as complex that he was a quirkless child in a world of quirks. Like all the others, he longed to be a hero, but it was hard to deal with the ridicule and bullying for his condition that others called it. He told her of suffering lows and struggling to find his place, and then Eri. He kept everything vague, not wanting to go into the details, but of how overhaul had taken him and how he struggled every day to try and find a way out of that terrible place. But he knew that he had to bring Eri with him, that no one was there for her, that no one had been there to save her. He took a deep breath when he told her he killed Overhaul. She could see there wasn't some bravado behind his statement. It wasn't a way to try and impress her. He had grappled with it and still does it to this day. After he and Eri came out of that place, he needed to take care of her. In his heart, he knew that this was something he was supposed to do with his life, and there was no way he could say no or run from it. He never dreamed of running a coffee shop, but as he moved through school, things just happened that way. He loves doing it, providing good food and even a friendly ear sometimes for people is the best part of his job. When she asked about the engagement, he said it didn't work out, they started going different ways and wanted other things. What do you want? She asked. It was the crux of the whole night, of if there would be anything further than this lovely dinner. He knew it, and so did she. She didn't want to waste her time, and he didn't want to either. He wasn't dumb, he could tell by how she dominated his thoughts that he had a massive crush on her. The way he caught himself, looking at her lips, wondering what it would be like to kiss her, that he wanted to be more than friends, but he wouldn't pursue that if what they wanted was just too different. I want to find someone who will love me, Eri, and my mom. I want someone who will set aside their day when I need it to help me get through mine. I want someone who will let me do the same for them, even if all I can do is lend an ear. I want to get married, to know that someone has chosen to spend the rest of their life with me. I want children, I never got to do the baby phase. He smiled wistfully, that was probably for the best given my circumstances. He laughed softly. I want someone who wants to be with me and looks forward to coming home to me. I want a partner, a lover, a wife. Ibera, I want it all. I want someone who loves me for Ibera, not Vine, she said, staring into his eyes. I want someone to come home to help me shed the day's troubles. To love and cherish, to call my husband, to be my lover. I want children, family vacations, and the whole thing. I don't know your mother or Eri, but I would love to get the chance to get to know them. From what I see, I am sure I will care for them if they are like you. She smiled, if someone told me you were some supervillain with a quirk to tell me everything I wanted to hear, then they would be right. I am fascinated with you, Izuku. You have done and said the right things, and I want to know if these butterflies inside me are right. I want to find out if they are right. His words were such honey to his ears, he couldn't explain it, this woman was so captivating. Then will you dance with me? He rose to his feet and offered her his hand. Ibera could see it, the metaphor, the dance, the courtship. He was not just asking for a dance, he wanted to know if they could be what they both wanted. A partner. I would very much like that, she responded, taking his hand. They stepped onto the dance floor and began to sway and move, they twirled and swayed, and no words passed. They just looked at each other. As the dance slowed, he gazed at her longingly. This may not be the most romantic way to say this, but may I kiss you, Ibera, he whispered. Ibera closed her eyes and tilted her head, please, Izuku, please kiss me, her response was whispered prayer-like, breathy, almost seductive. He leaned down and gently pressed his lips to her, he felt her respond. It was so warm, a rush started at their lips and spread throughout their bodies. Her arms found their way around his neck, his around her waist. It wasn't an inferno, but this fire was light, the longer they kissed, the more it grew. Ibera pulled away with a blissful smile on her face. She now understood what all the hoopla was about when the other girls would talk about a kiss. She felt it, and though there were 2 other kisses before this one, it was the one she had been waiting for. She silently prayed to her god, please let this be my last first kiss. At the observatory, they sat in the dark on their journey through the cosmos, their fingers lightly brushing against each other, till she took his hand. Slowly, their fingers interlaced, the warmth spreading through them. The dive home was too short for her tastes, their hands only separated when he helped her into the car and when they pulled up to her condo. This time, the kiss was more, her first real kiss, when her lips hesitantly parted, he was surprised, but soon the heat was roaring as they stood there locked in each other's arms in a heated kiss. She pulled apart, both of them breathing heavily. Good night Izuku. Good night Ibara. Ibara. She entered her condo before falling back against the door and squealing in delight. It was so good, perfect in so many ways. There was no question that what he wanted was also something she wanted. She knew they needed to get to know each other better and kiss more. Her hand went to her lips, which was her first real kiss. She was thankful she had waited. She looked at the time, deciding not to message her friends due to the hour. She knew who she did have to message in the morning, and that was her mother. As she walked into the agency, the air was different, everyone welcomed her with a smile, but she was told to wait outside Kami Wood's office. Once buzzed in, she saw him seated behind his desk and Mount Lady standing at his side. Is everything okay? She asked. Mount Lady smiled. For the most part, did you have an enjoyable date last night? You smirked. How did you? Her voice trailed when you turned the monitor around to see a picture of her and Izuku outside her building kissing. Has the virgin hero finally been plucked from the garden? And who is this mystery man? That is going to go live in a few hours, Kami said. We received a call from the Gazette just now asking for a statement. Of course, we told them that we do not comment on our sidekick's personal life. I told them that as long as you were happy, then it didn't matter to me, you said with a wink. Oh my goodness, I need to call him. Ibara said, blushing. Before you do that, there is a meeting you need to take in your office, Kami leaned forward. Take the meeting, then make your call. That important? She said, letting her phone slip back into her purse. Kami nodded as Ibara bowed and left the office. Kami, what if this messes things up? You said. I hope it doesn't, you, he stood up and kissed her. Now we need to get your maternity paperwork filed. Yu's hand went to her belly, that we do. Ibara walked towards her office and immediately noticed a member of the Hero Commission standing outside her office. Ms. Shiozaki, Special Investigator Ms. Hiro is waiting for you inside, he said, opening the door. Ibara entered her office and saw a very petite, young-looking girl woman sitting in a chair with a tablet in front of her. She looked up and smiled politely as she got to her feet. Ms. Shiozaki, it is a pleasure to meet you, she extended her hand, giving Ibara a courteous handshake. I am Special Investigator Hina Hiro, if you sit, we can get right to things. Thank you Ms. Hiro, Ibara said, setting her bag down. What is this about? Well, this stems from the incident with Backdrafted Sheer following the incident with Inferno. Ms. Hiro said as she pulled a file from her bag. Well, such incidents so close together would have caused us to begin to look into the situation. The citizens' involvement in both incidents warranted my involvement. While his involvement was regrettable, I failed to see how Ibara began to say. Then we have what will be on the gossip report in about an hour, Ms. Hiro said, turning and showing the tablet. You see, Ms. Shiozaki, we are not sure if you or he was the target of these attacks. Are you aware of who Mr. Midoriya is exactly? We are in the process of getting to know each other, Ibara said somewhat defensively. Yes, I can see that from the photo. Ms. Hiro said with a hint of sarcasm. If you are referring to the overhaul incident, then I am aware of some things, but not all the details, Ibara felt her eyebrow twitch. He told me himself. Was that before or after? Ms. Hiro clicked her tongue and pointed to the photo. Before, Ibara said, only to be cut off. You see, Ms. Shiozaki, we at the Hero Commission take such matters involving Mr. Midoriya and his daughter very seriously. His daughter has a ranked S+ healing quirk that is also ranked S+ destructive, so we like to monitor these situations rather closely. In case some villains get it in their heads to target Mr. Midoriya or his daughter. Ibara didn't like how this woman was talking to her or how she would say his daughter, it came out like a curse. Now we are investigating to see if you or he are the target of a coordinated attack or if this is just bad luck. I recommend keeping your distance from Mr. Midoriya and his family until we can establish that. With your reputation, I know he must seem rather charming, but Ms. Shiozaki, did he tell you what happened to Overhaul? He told me that he was taken, that he knew he had to escape and free Eri, and that he had to kill Overhaul to escape. Ibara said she wanted to defend Izuku from this woman, but she wasn't sure what she would be protecting him from. I could tell that it bothered him, even now. You see, Mr. Midoriya shot Overhaul with a quirk erasing bullet, then proceeded to bludgeon him to death with a steel pipe and a crowbar. The woman showed her photos of the mangled body that Ibara assumed was Overhaul. He then shot the corpse 3 times in the head. When asked, he said, and I quote, "That man did not deserve ever to draw another breath, I made sure that he wouldn't." Ms. Hiro sat back and closed the folder. "Listen, Ms. Shiozaki, the heart wants what it wants, but you should be careful with whom you decide to suck face, for your safety and his, stay away. At least till we close our investigation, it gives you a perfectly valid and safe reason to create space. We should have this wrapped up in about 6 to 9 months." Ms. Hiro got to her feet. "You have a good day now." Ibara sat back in the chair, looked at her phone, and saw a missed message. "Izuku. I had a wonderful time last night. I cannot wait to see you again." For 1 month, he couldn't get a real conversation out of Ibara. She told him she was busy getting back into things at the agency. That didn't bother him, she was a pro hero and had responsibilities, but she didn't even come by for a coffee, wasn't available for a lunch date, and was in a meeting when he popped by to drop off food for her. He sat back, his head resting on his pillow, wondering if he had gone about it all wrong, maybe too strong he didn't know, and that hurt. If she changed her mind, that would have hurt, but then he could at least understand and stop agonizing over it like a high schooler lying in his room at night, unable to sleep precisely like he was now. He stopped and pulled out his phone, making one last call. She was distant, pulling away. He had sat and had a long conversation with Inko, who, though she couldn't provide any information, did her best to comfort her son. She could tell he was hurt, but a dark suspicion was on her mind. And she wasn't the only one. Eri bit back her tears as she eavesdropped. She wondered if it was her fault, that maybe it would be better if she had never become his daughter. But she watched him smile with her, not a forced or fake smile, she knew how to spot those, but it was real. She kicked herself for even thinking that he didn't love her. His life may have been easier without her, but he always told her she was the best part of his day and the most significant thing in his life. She may not be familiar with relationships, but she knew someone must have stuck their nose into this one. She knew who it probably was, and while Leary couldn't do anything to her, she wasn't about to let Ibara walk away without an explanation. Her father was her greatest hero in the world, now it was her turn to be his. She owed him that. After all, the family fights for family. Ibara. She felt miserable, she was avoiding him, she didn't know what to say or do. So she just started to step back, his last message was what had her lying in the dark crying. Hitting play again on her phone, she laid her hand over her head as his voice filled the room. "Hey, Ibara. I hope I didn't do anything to hurt you. I don't want to keep bothering you or make you uncomfortable. I won't call or text anymore, if you want to reach out, you know where to reach me. I am sorry if I did something wrong. I hope you will tell me so I can fix it. If I can't, then maybe I can learn from it. It was a great few weeks, goodbye Ibara." When the light flicked on, she got to her feet, looking every bit the mess. Standing there was Setsuna and Itsuka. "You can ignore anyone you want, but you don't get to ignore us," Setsuna said, pointing between her and Itsuka. "Now, what is wrong? And who do I have to make disappear?" Ibara wanted to protest. She started wiping at her eyes until she got wrapped in a hug from Setsuna. "No, Ibi, you don't get to do that. I love you, you know how much I love you. Now talk to us." Itsuka hugged them both. "We promise, Ibi, we are just here to help, and if helping is listening, then we can do that." Ibara cried some in her best friend's arms. "And if we need to hide a body, we know people, besides, Mina owes us from her bachelorette party." Ibara started laughing despite the tears. "Darn right, she does. Oh, wash your face, I will get some tea going," Itsuka said. Set nodded as they separated. Once Ibara had some tea, she started to go over the conversation with Agent Hero. Set then made her recap the date, the failed dinner, the successful dinner, and the attack. "Ibi, not to be mean, but what the hell is wrong with you?" Set said, sitting back. "Why not just ask him? Are you afraid of him or something?" "No, he has never made me feel afraid," Ibara said, staring into her tea, as if it would give her answers. "Did he look like he got off on the violence?" Itsuka asked, to which Ibara shook her head no. "He told me he was part of the Shai Hasekai case, but he didn't tell me details. We all know that a civilian killed Overhaul." She responded. "But was it the level of violence?" Itsuka asked. It was brutal, and she had to admit it was surprising even to her, but she knew that sometimes violence could get out of hand, or there could be a reason for it. "So your solution for the guy that gives you butterflies and makes you have impure thoughts is to ghost him?" "Wait, impure thoughts?" Set said, shocked. "You seem to have left that part out when you told me. Am I missing something? Is he not a good guy?" "No, he is from my understanding," Itsuka said. "May talks about him a lot, in fact, May would go straight for him." Set was shocked at that. "Or try at the very least. I haven't had that much interaction, though. He did pull me aside and tell me little tricks to keep May from going off the rails and to be gentle with her." So we have a case or rather brutal violence without a whole lot of context because the files are all beyond our security clearance. We have him using correct and measured violence in 2 villain attacks with no signs of him enjoying the violence. He even has said that he doesn't like to talk about what happened with Shai Hasekai. Set put her cup down and stared at Ibera. Put on your big girl panties and figure this out. What are you doing? It's pretty messed up. I know I feel like crap, I want to follow my heart and it has been screaming at me to run over there and ask for answers, but my brain. Ibera laid her head down on the table. You need to figure it out, Itsuka said, coming around the table to hug her friend. If it is bad and something you can't move on with, then you owe it to him to tell him that. He saved your life. The least you can do is tell him face to face that you don't want to see him anymore. Ibera nodded, her friend stayed for a bit longer before they left her alone to get some sleep. She texted her mother, telling her she needed to talk with her. The agency. When her intercom went off, Ibera was behind her desk working through some paperwork from her morning patrol. Vine, a very distressed young girl, says she needs to speak to you about a villain attack. She won't speak to anyone else. Is she hurt? Ibera responded. Not that we can tell. She is refusing to let anyone get near her till she talks to you specifically, ma'am. We cannot even get her name. The receptionist responded. Have Floril escort her up to my office immediately. Ibera ordered, rushing to grab the more extensive medical kit just in case. When the door opened, standing there was Eri. Oh my god, Eri, are you okay? Does your father know? Ibera's face began to panic. Had villains targeted Izuku because of her? Is your father injured? Still crying up a storm, Eri closed the door and as the door closed, she stopped crying. This made Ibera freeze. Eri wiped her eyes. He is just fine. I needed to see you and didn't want you to try to dodge me. Eri, what is going on? Ibera said. I want to know the same thing. Eri demanded. If you don't like my dad, then just tell him, don't be a dick and just ghost him. Listen, Eri, things are more complicated than that, Ibera tried to protest. Or did some little blonde bitch who looks younger than me come in and tell you some bullshit? Eri said, taking a seat. Ibera briefly stared at the young woman, Hinahiro. How do you know her? Ibera said, taking a seat next to Eri. Hina was engaged to my dad when I came along. That is to say, when my father rescued me from the Shai Hasekai. My dad went through hell to save me and promised me that he wouldn't let anyone take me away from him. She wanted me to be turned over to the Hero Commission and she insisted on it. Eri reached into her bag and pulled an apple core into a plastic bag. She pulled the core out and Ibera watched as the apple core turned back into an apple. Eri took a healthy bite to show it wasn't a trick. My quirk is called Rewind. I can reverse an object in time back to a previous state of being. Eri looked sad. That is what I did to my biological father. My mother freaked and gave me to Overhaul. He told me I was diseased, that I was worthless, a monster. Eri's eyes welled with tears. He would take my blood and perform all kinds of experiments on me or with parts of my body. You see, he could assemble and disassemble matter on a molecular level. So he would explode me, that remake me to start over again. How old were you when this started? Ibera asked in horror. I was 5, Eri said matter-of-factly. Why would he do such a thing? He thought quirks were a disease, a plague upon the world, and with my quirk, he was going to make it all go away. Eri said, wiping her eyes. Quirk erasing bullets. Ibara whispered. Eri nodded. I ran away a lot, but he would always find me. He had heroes and cops on his peril. Till I found him. Izuku? Ibara said, though she knew the answer. He found me and took me in. Overhaul found us and dragged us both back to the compound. He would explode both of us or Izuku to get me to comply. Over and over again, Eri's tears started falling. She didn't even notice. Izuku never got mad or called me a monster. He would tell me I was a precious unicorn, pure and sweet. He would get us out and home, and I would be with him forever. Overhaul never would have stopped. When the raid came, he was ready to kill my father and take me away to some dark lord. Eri angrily wiped the tears. That stupid toga chick had convinced him to turn me over as the leader of the Love. All for one, Ibara said. My father did what he had to save me. He killed Overhaul. I watched it happen. Then when it was over, to make sure, he put a bullet in that son of a bitch's head. He did what he had to do for me. Eri got to her feet and walked around the room, ignoring her tears and screaming. He would wake up screaming for years because of me. He didn't get married because of me. He couldn't have a normal life because he loved me. That stupid bitch couldn't stand the thought of me. Eri sat back down. He was crying, and May came over and was just being his friend, holding him, and that dumb bitch tried to destroy May's career. Something had to be going on. I tried to run away, but he chased me down. When I couldn't take it anymore, he held me until I could. My father loves me, he is a good man. Don't let some jealous little troll make you walk away. The bear looked at Eri, her face was tear-streaked and her eyes were even more red than usual. Vine, my father did what he did because he saw a man kill at least 20 people, explode me over and over, every day for 6 months, and felt that same pain every day himself. I sleep knowing the monster is gone, he can't sleep some nights because of that. Eerie stood up and grabbed her bag. I don't know you, but I know you make him happy in a way I never can. I want to get to know you, though. Why did you do this? Ibarra asked. This young woman had come in, dropped these revelations, and walked out like nothing. Because he is my father, and I love him, Eerie smiled. Family fights for family. Even harder than we fight for ourselves. That is what he says, and that is what my grandmother says. That smile just captivated Ibarra. This girl who had gone through hell had been rescued by a quirkless boy who took the burden of saving her upon himself. He gave up on relationships and whatever goals he had to ensure she could stand there one day and smile. He would throw himself into danger to save people, he didn't for Eerie, he did it for her. He didn't want anything in return. What he wanted was to be with her. He never lied, he told her Eerie was the most important thing, that he wanted to get married and have children. To have a partner doesn't listen to the words of others and let that make their judgments. A partner talks, work it out together and carries the burden of the day and their lives. He never boasted about what happened with Overhaul, he didn't tell her that she of the burden he took from it. The cross he bore. And she was about to or had let it slip right through her fingers. Ibarra didn't believe in destiny, not in a traditional sense. For her, it was a path that her God wanted her to walk down, he would put the choice in her hands and let her choose. And when she chose the path he wanted, she could feel it. Izuku had been placed in her path, she wanted to go on an actual date with him, and he had asked her. She felt it with him, she knew when they kissed. No one had ever made them feel this way, she had been in misery this past month. Now, his daughter had come to fight for him. Somehow, Eerie knew what had happened and had come to make sure Ibarra understood what she was letting walk away and what she was throwing away. Izuku didn't want Vine, he wanted Ibarra. And she wanted him. She ran from her office to the stairwell, leaping quickly. When she hit the lobby, she saw Eerie stepping out of the elevator. Eerie. She called out as she ran to the girl. Eerie jumped at the sound of her name, but relaxed at the sight of Ibarra running towards her. Is it too late? Ibarra asked, then she realized she was asking his child. I don't know, Eerie shrugged. But you can come home with me, and maybe you can salvage it. My dad always says the worst anyone can say to a question is no. But they might say yes. Higher Grounds coffee shop. Izuku was in a down mood, he had received radio silence since the voicemail. He had his answer, maybe he was just doomed to be alone. Perhaps he could be lucky number 10 for Inari's mom. The door to the cafe opened, it was close to closing time. He heard his favorite words. Hi Dad. His funk immediately lessened, and when he looked up, he was speechless, his daughter and Ibarra were standing with her. I have homework, Eerie said and ran off. Ibarra fiddled with her hands before he saw her visibly steady herself, and she walked over. I didn't think I would see you again, he said, he saw her wince some. Am I too late? She whispered. Too late for what? He responded. For us, for you. She replied, looking him in the eyes. I messed up, I know I messed up, and I am sorry. I am so sorry Izuku. Please don't tell me I am too late. Please tell me I can fix this. His heart soared, his blood boiled, and his brain was confused. It was a torrent of emotions that ran through him. It hurt Ibarra, if you were too busy, I understand, but you couldn't give me 1/2 an hour. 10 minutes. I called and texted, but you barely responded. You are saying everything I want to hear, but I don't know. I messed up. Okay, I know that Ibarra was almost pleading. I listened to the wrong person instead of my heart told me to be here, to be with you. Then what was the problem? Izuku responded, she could hear the hurt in his voice. Instead of coming to you like a partner, like a freaking adult, I hid. I hid because I was scared, she said. Scared of what? He said, of me. Scared I made some sort of mistake, scared that way I felt was wrong, she sighed. When I returned to work, a woman from the Hero Commission was there and she wanted to talk to me about the villain attacks. Izuku did not like this, he was beginning to get angry about where this was going. She showed me pictures of Overhaul and told me what happened, well, part of what happened. Made me doubt myself, doubt you. She hugged herself. Instead of coming to you, I just withdrew. I shouldn't have withdrawn, I made a mistake, Izuku. Can you forgive me? Dina Hero? When Ibarra nodded, he saw red for a moment. Then show me what you want, Ibarra. Ibarra didn't hesitate, she stepped up and kissed him full in the middle of the cafe. I want you. I want to be with you. I want to date you and fall in love. After that, I want to get married, have children, and live together. Then you have to stay for dinner tonight, he whispered, breathless and a little weak in the knees from the kiss. She hugged him tightly, thank you Izuku. The clapping and the cheering from the staff and patrons made them blush and step back. Ibera was nervous about joining the family for dinner, she had to excuse herself to call her agency as she had just run out. Inko was polite, but Ibera could tell the matriarch was upset with the heroine. It seemed to go a long way when Ibera apologized in private and promised to try not to do something dumb again. That was perfect, Inko said to Ibera's confusion. You didn't say it wouldn't happen again, but that you try and not let it. Listen to an older woman, mistakes will be made, trust me on both ends. But as long as you both sit down and talk about it, you can mitigate the disaster or prevent the weed of anger from destroying your garden. Ibera smiled at that turn of phrase. Dinner was a lovely chicken curry and rice, with ice cream for dessert. Ibara hadn't been in such a warm home in so long. Inko, Izuku and Eri all just smiled and laughed with each other, they just pulled Ibara in effortlessly. It made Ibara miss her parents, she hadn't seen them as much as she should and now she wanted to introduce them to Izuku. Izuku and Eri were making popcorn for the movie they would watch. Inko had gone to the cafe to grab drinks and Ibara could see little ones holding blankets and fighting over a spot in front of the television. She blushed slightly at the fantasy, but it felt warm, inviting, and obtainable. So, are you guys a couple now? Eri said with a sly grin as the movie was about to start. I think so. Izuku said, confused, the very tone of his voice made Ibara giggle as she snuggled in another thing to check off her list. Yes, Eri, Ibara said. She wasn't sure when she fell asleep against him, but she never felt so warm. When she awoke, the room was dark, his hand was on her hip, over the blanket. His head was tilted back as he snored lightly, her head was in his lap. She blushed furiously, ever so thankful for the darkness. When she went to get up, she heard him speak. Don't go. But Izuku, she protested, her protest was cut off when he pulled her down to his lap and kissed her. Stay, you have to get up in about 3 hours anyway, he pulled back from their kiss, their breathing slightly heavy. I know, but she leaned down and started kissing him again, this time, they decided to take their kissing lessons from the country of France. When they broke apart, they breathed heavily, I need fresh clothes. He leaned in and started to kiss her neck, she tilted it to the side, allowing him more access. Oh my, she managed to say. When they broke apart, she started to do the same to his neck. They broke apart again. I have an idea, he managed to say. I am listening, she responded, trailing her fingers down his chest. You stay here and we keep making out. She blushed a bright red, what are we, teenagers? We can be, he responded as they started kissing again. I never made out with a boyfriend before, she said between kisses. We should make up for lost time, he said, capturing her lips again. He took her moan as yes. Ibara had never felt like this before and had never been in this position. She now understood how things could go farther than intended sometimes. He was on his back and she was straddling him, his hand grabbed her butt, a rather pleasant sensation. But when their hips moved together, the jolt of pleasure and sensation made her pull away red as a tomato. They stopped and separated for about 3 minutes, then she was on her back, her leg up around his hips, his kisses on her neck trilling slightly lower than electric charge between them, and both hips met. She looked at him wide-eyed. I need to go, she said, blushing and breathing rather heavily. Go? He said, confused, lost in a haze of desire. If I don't go, I think I may be in trouble. He got up so she could stand, and they started kissing again, the passion threatening to take over. Yes, trouble, she kissed him briefly and fled. Izuku stood there confused and aroused, so he went to take a shower. Ibara fled onto the street, she had never felt like this and didn't know what to do. She went to Itsuka's, she knew her friend had just gotten off patrol and it usually took her a while to wind down. Itsuka opened her door, confused and in a robe, not expecting to see Ibara. Honey, is everything okay? She asked. Yes, he took me back, we are a couple, Ibara replied. I fell asleep on him, then we started kissing and I want him, she said, putting her hand over her face. Like you want to be with him, Itsuka said, confused. No, Itsuka, Ibara struggled. I want him, please don't make me say it. You want him sexually? Itsuka said with a smirk. Ibara nodded her head. Before anything else could be said, a new but familiar voice rang out. Are you coming back to bed? Itsuka blushed, and Ibara looked mortified as she looked past Itsuka and stood there naked with Mei. That wasn't entirely true, Mei had on fox ears and bushy foxtail. Ibara saw no straps. Oh god, I am so sorry, Ibara squealed. Sorry to interrupt, Mei, she yelled as she fled. You naughty fox, Itsuka purred as the door closed. Ibara was mildly annoyed that she had such good hearing. Instead, as soon as she got home, she took a very long shower. After a very frustrating and unproductive day at work, though it was highlighted by Izuku bringing her lunch, she loved that he brought her food. Even though he sat on the opposite side of the desk when he came around to kiss her goodbye timidly, the thoughts that ran through her head made the rest of the day a mess. Ibara did everything she could think of. She called her mom. Mother and daughter. Tsuneru was pleased to hear from her daughter. They had spoken when she had been injured. She and her husband even traveled to see Ibara and spent a few days with her. She wanted to spend more, but Ibara sent them home. In truth, Tsuneru worried about her precious Ibara, especially after the first month at UA. But the Lord called her daughter to be a hero. That was what Ibara felt in her heart, so Tsuneru respected that. She was surprised to receive the call from her daughter, but the topic knocked her for a loop. Her husband Shinko was surprised when his wife told him they needed to fly to see Ibara. He wasn't upset by it. The urgency surprised him. Once she assured him that all was well, he cleared his calendar and ordered the jet to be fueled. He met his wife at the terminal, and she divulged that their daughter had met someone and they had started dating. Shinko was slightly shocked, a little bit excited, and very overprotective. He needed to know who this person was immediately. Tsuneru told him the truth because she didn't even know the young suitor's name, but apparently, Ibara was quite smitten, as his wife put it. He frowned some, not that he didn't want his daughter to be happy, quite the contrary, he wanted all the happiness in the world for her. The dream of grandchildren was not dead for him or his wife. They had tried numerous times to arrange meetings for her, but it never failed that after the initial meeting, there was nothing more. He remembered mentioning a matchmaker. He was in trouble for well over a year after that one. But now they were flying to hear about some rogue that had swooped in and was attempting to sweep his little girl off her feet. Well, not on his watch. He had to protect Ibara even if it was from herself, hero or not, she was his little girl. Higher grounds. Izuku almost did a double take from the kitchen when he saw the group of women come in. One could say that they were all very beautiful. Second, Pinky trying to be in disguise was quite funny. It was a whole group trying to be in disguise, but trying not to look like they were in disguise, hats and sunglasses, attempts at inconspicuous clothing. So they stood out like a sore thumb. It wasn't hard to piece together who they were, but he smiled, they were probably here to spy on him. With a smile, he emerged from the back and told his work, Annabelle, that he would handle that table. Hello, ladies, welcome to Higher Grounds. Have you had a chance to consider what you would like to drink, or were you open to some suggestions? The rather voluptuous raven-haired woman with the $10,000 sunglasses. Oh, we were just discussing that. What do you recommend, sir? Our coffees are delicious. If coffee is not to your taste, we have a lovely house blend of black and wonderful green tea. If you are looking for a snack, I have to recommend our cinnamon rolls, something light. We have a very nice cranberry walnut salad. Our club sandwich is quite popular, and our special today is a French dip. He said with a smile, addressing the whole table and keeping eye contact, though some of those shirts offered tempting views. They ordered drinks, then food, and ended with pastries. They always talked to him, asking him simple but revealing questions. It was a pleasant interrogation. At the end, he walked over and thanked them for their patronage. When they asked for the bill, he smiled. Any friends of Ibara are more than welcome, he said with a smile. But I would ask if I could get your autographs for my daughter. She is a huge fan of you ladies, especially you, Pinky. You knew who we were? Achako asked, grinning. I did, some of you stick out like a sore thumb, but I remembered you, he grinned. Achako blushed and pointed at herself. Me, why me? We met before the wharf collapse. I was one of the volunteers that came down. I saw how exhausted you were, and then this group of girls came up behind you and called your name. You just came alive for them, you didn't show them the fatigue, the frustration, or anything. You smiled for them that day, it made them feel that despite the tragedy, everything would be alright, he said with a fond tone. Pinky, no way in hell I could forget you. And the rest I could piece out from there. So, did I pass? Satsuna smiled, you did, the food was great, you didn't stare down our tops, and you didn't make a scene. Good, I look forward to getting to know you better in the future, he bowed. Once they signed the autographs for Eri, he left them to their after-meal drink and pastries. Achako was still blushing, then she took a bite of the cinnamon roll, her eyes nearly rolled back in her head. Okay, if Ibara doesn't want him, I call fucking dibs. The table looked at her, shocked, the things I would eat off that body. The table started laughing. The Ibaras. Shinko was happy to see his daughter, but his wife and she had disappeared into Ibara's bedroom, with his lovely wife telling him this would take a while. Shinko tidied up for about 2 minutes. The home was immaculate and he smiled at that fact. He decided to take out the trash and noticed a few bags from somewhere called Higher Grounds. He pulled out his phone. It wasn't too far, a short drive or long walk. He decided he could go for a cup of coffee and maybe a muffin. He left a note on the counter and headed out the door. It was close to closing time when the bell above the door announced the arrival of a customer. Izuku was behind the counter as he had sent everyone else home for the day. The man was dressed in a nice suit, he was of average height with a lean build, and his hair, white, was parted to the side. Izuku smiled as the man walked over and looked at the pastry case before he came down and sat at the bar in front of Izuku. "Hello, sir, welcome to higher grounds," he said with a smile. "Is there something I can help you with?" The man momentarily looked at the drink board. "I would like a cup of house blend, sugar on the side, and one of the cranberry orange muffins heated, please." "For here?" Izuku asked, to which the man nodded. Once Izuku set the food in front of him, the man took a sip of the coffee, smiled, then a bite of the muffin, and smiled even more. "I wish this place were in Tokyo," the man said. "Oh, are you visiting?" "Yes, my wife and I came down to see our daughter," the man responded. "But they are engaged in girl talk, so I decided to get out and have a cup of coffee." "Thank you for coming in," Izuku smiled. "Is it hard with your daughter living away? Is that your little girl?" The man pointed to a picture of Eri, him, and Inko standing in front of the shop at the grand opening. "Yes," Izuku said, looking at the picture and smiling, "that was taken when we opened." "You all look rather young there," the man commented. The man looked apologetic. "I am sorry, sir, I didn't mean to." "No, it is understandable. She is adopted, but I couldn't imagine loving her any more than I do," he smiled. "She is the light of my world." "That is a sentiment I could get behind," the man chuckled. "Has she started dating yet?" "No, thank goodness," Izuku laughed as he knocked on the wood countertop. "Yours?" "Nothing serious, she is about your age, but she met someone," the man said, taking another drink of coffee and smiling. "That is why we are here, she is all smitten." "Is that a good thing?" "It can be," the man looked off like he was gazing out over the distance. "I don't know him, though, I haven't met him. I want to make sure he is good enough for her. Do you know what I mean?" "I think I do," but Izuku smiled and looked at the photo again. "Is there anyone good enough?" The man laughed. "No truer statement, you know I like you." "Shinko," the man said, extending his hand. "Izuku," he shook the man's hand firmly. "Owner of higher grounds." "Well, this is a nice place, a little quiet though," he said, looking around. "It is about closing time, we do mornings and lunch mainly," Izuku responded. "It works out good, it gives me time to spend with my daughter, though she is of the age that going out with friends is her highlight." "I remember those days, they grow up so fast," he ate more of his muffin. "One day, they hold your hand and never want to let go. Next thing you know, they are running off and you are just trying to keep up." "But the hugs," Izuku said, smiling. Shinko just smiled back. "Those hugs from them, those are just magical." "You are most definitely a father to a little girl," Shinko said. He finished his coffee and muffin. "Can I get a cup to go, 4 of these cranberry orange muffins, and 4 of those cinnamon rolls. Extra icing on the side, please." "Happy to, sir." Izuku packed up the man's order, rang him up, and placed the bill down. The man took it, nodded, and paid with a smile. "Do you recommend anywhere I can pick up some food for the trip home, something local?" Shinko asked. "There is a place just down the block called Frights that does an amazing steak and frites with fresh vegetables. I highly recommend it," Izuku said, handing the man his change. "Thank you, sir. Maybe I will bring my wife and daughter by. If these cinnamon rolls taste just as good as they look, she will always be here." Shinko liked the smile that Izuku gave and the polite bow of respect. "That sounds wonderful, sir. I hope whoever this guy is, he at least, has enough common sense to treat her like the princess she is," Izuku laughed. "For his sake." Shinko laughed as he walked towards the door. "Yeah, be ashamed to have beat him up." Ibara's apartment. Tsuneru listened to her daughter's tale from the attack, including the details that Ibara had omitted. To the second attack, the thank you dinner, the date, and then a visit from the Hero Commission. She saw all the emotions on her face, and then she told her about Eri coming to her office. How she just felt so terrible for how she had treated him, how miserable she felt trying to pull away. She ran to him and asked forgiveness, which he gave. She had dinner with his family, falling asleep on the couch, and they made out. Watching her full-grown pro-heroine, a survivor of the war, blush, telling her that she made out with her boyfriend and making her excited was almost enough to make Tsuneru laugh. But she didn't, for all their sakes. "Honey, that is lust," she said. "You are attracted to this man, and you are feeling lust." "But how do I deal with it?" Ibara fidgeted. "I never have had anyone make me feel this way. I want to be around him and do stuff, but I want to kiss him and." "That is a good thing, Ibara," she smiled and squeezed her daughter's hand. "Your father has that same effect on me, and he knocked me for a loop when we started dating. I never knew a man could kiss so well." Ibara laughed. "But once I knew he was the one for me and wanted to be with me for the rest of his life, that was all I needed." "But mom, the wedding night," Ibara muttered. "Honey, you can do a lot and save that for the wedding night still." Ibara went beet red. This time, Tsuneru couldn't suppress her laugh. "Now listen, Ibara, I have always told you that you needed to make sure that the person you gave yourself to like that was special, that once you gave it away, you couldn't get it back and it would change everything. In your line of work, heck, if you came to me and told me that during school one night you were intimate with one of your classmates, I would have understood." "Mother." Ibera was shocked. What you and all of them went through, Scenario didn't let the tears loose. No one should have to go through that. You put your life on the line daily, you had to fight to survive school. I would never think to judge you. That is not my place. I am your mother, and I love you. Ibera smiled as her mother pulled her into a hug. If you tell me this is the one, then this is the one. I want to meet him. I insist on doing so before we go home. But I think it is time I give you the talk. Mother? Ibera said questioningly. We are lambs before God, but we are lionesses in the bedroom. Ibera questioned her life choices at that moment as her mother shocked and embarrassed her in ways she had never thought possible. Once, Ibera compassed herself, we need to talk to your father. I am sure he will have questions about this Izuku Midoriya. The two ladies walked into the kitchen to see takeout waiting for them while her father was eating. He looked up sheepishly. Then, Ibera noticed the bag on the table, higher grounds. She knew it wasn't there before she went to the room with her mother. Her sweat dropped and she panicked slightly. Dad, she pointed to the bag. Where did you get this? Oh, I was bored waiting for you guys, so I took out the trash and saw you had a few bags from this place, so I looked it up, he responded, walking over to get his hug. Great little coffee shop, met the owner, nice guy, the name was Izuku. Do you know him? Tsuneru froze, yes, Dad, he is my boyfriend. Ibera said. The room was silent for about 4 seconds. That's it for today guys, hope you enjoyed this, if you did then please make sure to leave a like, share and do check it out author of this fanfic. Take care. Thanks for watching.